Hello and welcome to this video in which I would like to exchange some time against knowledge again, and today we go into a slightly different field and I would like to show you a relatively simple tool for training images with Flux. So LoRa training's relatively easy, relatively quickly implemented. Of course, you need a little hardware power there, but not as much as you might think. So if you are working in the image generation area on local machines, then you can do this very well with this tool. And now we jump right in. I'll show you a few examples right at the beginning. I have here Amiga 500 covers as a basis. I have Amiga 500 gameplay videos. I'm currently working on that. We don't see that yet in this video. What we will also see is that I have taken Arcane screenshots to train the style of the Arcane series, the Netflix series. And I have taken a few training pictures of myself. Yes, that's me. I just shot them very quickly in between here in our house to see how it works, and the results speak for themselves. I have generated a few examples down here that show me after that. I thought that was very funny. I don't know how this happened here. But that's pretty good. That's pretty nice too. These are results that I achieved with a LoRa from the Amiga 500 covers. Although I also differentiated a bit there. We have a game with the name Starships for the Amiga, or games with the name Cat Detective. This is all trained on the datasets that I have just shown you, and also only with very few pictures. Up here we have a few examples for Arcane style, which have also turned out pretty well. And then I mixed LoRas again. This was, for example, a mix of the LoRa that I created with myself plus Arcane style. And these are the results of mixtures between my LoRa and the Amiga 500 cover LoRa. It works very, very well. I stay in here and we go back here again. How does it work now? There is a tool called Fluxgym. Let's go there now. This is the GitHub page. Let's scroll down and this is what it looks like later. We'll see that here in a moment. What is it? I have actually just explained to you in principle. It has support for 12 GB VRAM, 16 GB VRAM and 20 GB VRAM, of course also over 20 GB. I have heard that it works with 8 GB VRAM, but then it gets really slow, because then of course the whole swapping between VRAM and RAM and so on starts, so if you still have fun with it, I can't say. I currently have a 16 GB card installed with me. I upgraded it a bit to a 4070 Ti Super. It turned out that way. Works well. I'll shoot benchmarks a little later, just shoot them in blue. So, we can play with Flux Dev, Dev 2 Pro and Schnell. Although Schnell is not recommended, I have not tried it yet. I have always trained with Flux Dev so far. It works quite well and goes relatively quickly, which I think is quite cool. So you can really play around with it a bit, although we are already in a half hour to open-end area, as far as the speed is concerned, but we'll get to that in a moment. The installation. I'll start by saying that you can install it manually and follow the instructions here. There is also a Docker version down here. I have chosen the simplest version, which is Pinocchio. This is a tool in which you can install several AI applications and the tool takes care of it itself. This is great to try out new techniques in a clean and encapsulated environment. So let's jump right in. The URL is pinocchio.computer. This is what it looks like. If you click on download, you get to the Windows installer. If you go down, you also have the Mac installer. If you scroll down further, you will find the Linux version of it. As I said, this is a very practical tool and I have also done it in it. I can put the link in the description below. Let's start the whole thing. And this is what it looks like. It takes a while for it to start. Of course, I will cut it out in this video. As you can see, I have installed a few apps. Here is the Fluxgym. How to find it? Go to Discover and you will get a list of all apps for Pinocchio. Then search for Fluxgym and you can download and install it here. So I start the whole stuff. It takes a while. I will make a cut in the video. I don't know if it is necessary. I just keep going. While the whole tool is booting up here, there is a very interesting folder in Fluxgym. And we can see that here in Files, one folder is Datasets. Let's have a look with View folder up here. We can look at it in File Explorer. This is this Datasets folder. Here Fluxgym saves the needed datasets when you start a training. Fluxgym takes care of creating them. So you tell him a few parameters and a few images that you want to train, and Fluxgym creates these datasets. If you fail your training because you have chosen a wrong parameter or something like that, etc., then take a look in this folder. Because if you give it the same name again, then it may be that it simply expands the old dataset around the new data. We have expanded the data. I had a full beard and tried to train it. At some point I changed and took more current images without beard. And suddenly in the sample images I came out again and again with beard. And I wondered where he takes this information with beard. And yes, he just mixed the data sets here. That's why he looks in there, deletes the data set, and then starts a new training. This is cleaner, so that you are safe, so that you don't mix any data sets. I think this is just a test on the folder name, and then you just have a wild mix afterwards. Another interesting folder is this Outputs folder here. Here you will find all your trained data. I'll go in here too. This is what the whole thing looks like. I always clean it up a bit. This is the last Safetenses file for the LoRa that was created. It's not that big, under 40 megabytes. However, you will probably see other Safetenses here. This is because Fluxgym stores intermediate steps. You can use them to see if any intermediate step is better than the end result. Maybe a little bit of overtraining. However, I always delete them and take the last one. Here we see sample images. This is the folder where the example images that are generated during the training are saved. So here you can see the progress a little bit. Also here in Arcane Style, for example. Here you can also see the changes of an image in the course of the passing epochs. Well, in the background it has already started. I don't have to cut it. That's very good. Then I'll show you what you can enter here quickly. So, up here, the first entry area is the name of the LoRa. We'll get to that in a moment. So, this is the trigger word. We know it. Trigger words for LoRas. You can enter something there. You don't have to use it later, I think. I don't think you can really use it, but you can use it to trigger the LoRa a little bit more. But Fluxgym wants one from us, and if I say here, for example, I want Arcane Style, then I can enter that here. So, information is already being built up for us here on the right. It looks more complicated than it is, because you don't have to pay attention to that. We can pay attention, but we don't have to, just a little bit of information. So, we take Flux Dev. Here we can also choose between the others. But I stay with Flux Dev. I have a 16 GB VRAM card. If he has 12 GB, he takes that. If he has 20 GB or more, he takes that. I take 16 GB. Repeat trains per image. With this we can indicate how often a picture should be trained within an epoch. I noticed that 10 is already quite high. You can try it with 1. From 4 to 5 repeats it was better for trainings of my person, but for stylistic training like Arcane Style, it was enough with 1. But it depends on the amount of pictures you give him for training. But if I want to say I only want 5 repeats, I give him 5. If I want to add an epoch, I want only 8. So an epoch is how often the images are thrown back in. So an image is thrown back in, for example in epoch 1, and a model is trained on it. Then it can be within this one epoch that we throw the image back in 5 times. The longer it takes, of course, to train an epoch. But we can also say that we want to train several epochs with only 1 repeat or so. You have to get a feeling for what works best, but it doesn't always have to be the overhaul of 10 repeats and 16 epochs. Sometimes it's a combination of 1 repeat and 16 epochs, or 5 repeats and 8 epochs. As I'm showing here, it's enough for that. We stay on the left side first, before we go to the middle. Down here we can enter prompts. I can now say, for example, arcane style, a woman running through a dark alley, which would fit a little with arcane, and per line I could now add other prompts here, so that it is based on lines. Each line is a prompt. And I can't talk and type. Is that right? Yes, good. Good enough, in any case. So, we go back to the installation page of Fluxgym. Because if we scroll down here, we can do other things with these prompts. So, here the prompts are explained. So, we have declared a. Also here, TDB. What is TDB? Oh, teddy bear, or something like that, and prompt in each line. But you can also specify additional parameters. They come from the Cohere scripts. For example, D42 would tell the whole thing to use the seed 42 for this image. And there are more parameters that we can find and read down here. This is, for example, N for negative prompt, W for width, H for height, seed, CFG scale, and the steps. Standardly, 20 steps are taken to generate an example image. You can also manipulate this here. And you can also adjust the weight within a prompt. For example, sunny day, where sunny gets a weight of 1.2. We know this from Comfy UI. We will not do publish the hugging face. You can do it yourself if you want to. Back to Fluxgym. Here below sample image every n steps. We will leave that at 0 for now. We will calculate that later, so we don't have to calculate. It's a feeling calculation, let's say so. And here we see resized dataset images. This means that the images that we give him to train, which we will do in a moment, will be reduced to 512 on the shortest side, I think. So the page ratio will remain the same, nothing will be cropped or anything, but it will be reduced to 512 either in height or width. We can go up to 1024 with this. Of course, the bigger the images we put in, the more time it takes to farm and the longer it takes. In my experience, we are really talking about days. So it can be that the training takes longer than 24 hours. 512 is a good starting point. You can train very quickly with it, so sometimes see results in half an hour. If you want to see the final result, if you go up, remember that it can take a long time. But if we want to train a style, the 512 is maybe enough. If we want to train images that have more or less smaller details in the images themselves, which are important to us, then a higher resolution makes sense. The finer the image is, the more details are added to the model. You have to look at that. We stay at 512 and go to the middle point. Step 2. Dataset. We don't need the outputs folder. I take our Amiga 500 covers again. And now I choose 5 and throw them in here. We can just drag and drop them in here now. So now we see here are our 5 pictures. I just took some randomly. Oh, isn't this Dungeons and Dragons here? Whatever. What we still need, of course, is captions. And Fluxgym also provides a tool for us. And we can say, add AI captions with Florence 2. Florence 2 from Microsoft for image analysis, it spits out text for us. I can press it once and then the whole thing rattles off. It took a while now. Not long, 20 to 30 seconds or so. I used the time to drink something. But now we can see the captions here. We will make a separate section in this video about the topic datasets. Let's go back again. What has been calculated here are the expected training steps. We see now that 200 steps are expected by Fluxgym, which the training needs. And now we come down here again to the sample image every n steps. Here you can say after how many steps these test images should be rendered again and again, which you have defined up here. I have 10% as a rule of thumb. That means I would now take all 20 steps or something like that. Of course, you could also take 5% of it or something like that. That all 40 steps are generated. Or leave it at 0 if you just blindly trust the whole thing. However, you can always see through the example images or the sample images that are generated again and again whether your training is moving in the right direction. Since I'm not going to start a training right now, let's take a quick look at how it looks. I'm not starting it here because of VRAM and recording and so on. This is what it will look like. So you have a console information here. The whole thing also always scrolls down. If you want to scroll up again to check something, you have to set this auto scroll button to off, then you can scroll up in Pinocchio again. Otherwise you are always on the most current console output, and down here you can see the generated images. The whole thing takes place down here in the train log and in the samples area, and as I said, an auto scroll button appears up here that always keeps you down here in this view. If you want to scroll up again, you have to turn it on once, then you can go up again. And that would be it. We are back, so I say my 10%, 20 steps. Now we have set everything. Of course, we still need a name for the whole LoRa story. I always do it like this. I take my keyword arcane style. Then I say I want steps 5, which corresponds to this one here. I have epochs 8, which corresponds to this one here. I have I5, this is 5. This is the number of images that I have thrown in, and the whole thing on a training size of 512. And so I would then start the LoRa, because that has the nice advantage that we can now say, okay, we want the same LoRa with arcane style, also again with 5 steps, but for example with 16 epochs also generate. This is E16, and we have kept everything clean on the board to be able to compare it later in the Comfy UI. All that would be necessary now would be to press the Start Training button up here and the whole training would start. And so you can actually get into the story and have a look to get a foot in there and get a feeling of how the whole thing works. As a starting point, I took a few benchmarks. For example, one step with 150 pictures took 1 hour and 9 minutes, and 5 steps with 8 eras and 10 pictures took 1 hour and 21 minutes. Especially at the last 2 values, you can already notice that this is something that can be thrown in between. Be it overnight or even during the day, if you have to clean your apartment or something like that, then you can do it. And then you have results afterwards. So you can get into the topic pretty fast. The next point. Down here are advanced options. I left them out so far. These are all the parameters that come from the Cohere scripts. To train models. If you know how to use them, great. You can enter them here and give them to the Fluxgym. If not, you can ignore them. As you can read from the GitHub page of Fluxgym, they are always set up in such a way that it is enough for an optimized training or a standardized training. Nevertheless, you have a few more options here, for example the save every n epochs. These are the intermediate steps that I mentioned at the beginning, which are then saved on your board. You can also turn it down here. They never hurt me. I just let them run along and delete them afterwards. This is what the advanced options are. It's not necessary to open it. You can do a deep dive, but I didn't have the time to look at all the parameters. What is interesting, and also takes a lot of time, is the preparation of data sets. We already have a very good built-in solution here. However, if one of you has worked with Florent 2 before, you will notice that this is the option detailed captions, I would say, which is taken here. If you know Florent 2, you know that there is a more detailed captions option. Let's jump to the Fluxgym GitHub page. There is something very interesting down here. Uploading caption files. The UI offers us the possibility to upload self-generated text files with the corresponding captions. I'll throw all the images out here again. Let's take a look at some more images. As you can see, I already have text files here. They have the same file name. And that's what Fluxgym recognizes. 3dgalaxy.jpg and 3dgalaxy.txt, and now it automatically sorts the image with the caption file, and we can already see that I have a much more detailed and longer description here. This is because I made it with QWEN2. so we can give the model a lot more information to train with than with the built-in Florence 2 variant. And to do this, we can jump into the comfy UI. If I take a workflow that is prepared for Florence 2, I have done this. I load images from a folder that I call to caption. I run the whole thing through Florence 2. Here I have set the tokens to 4096. And now I can select here. I think this is the option that Fluxgym uses, detailed caption. But I can also select more detailed caption. And that gives us more information than the detailed caption alone. I save the whole thing in a folder with the name Florence Captions. Here I can combine the whole thing with a trigger word. Because if we look in here, we see that this trigger word always has to appear in these descriptions. This workflow and the others will be available for download. The link is in the description below, but this is how it could look like. You can still adjust it if you want. Another drawback of Comfy UI is that we have a limit of 100 executions. For example, if I want to have 200 images, I click out. As you can see, we only have the option to take 100. By the way, I control the whole thing here in the front with the integer on increment. I start at 0. If I were to do 100 repeats now, then it would just count the index and always get the next image out of the folder. This is how it usually works for all these workflows. Another alternative is a QWEN2 workflow. It works basically the same. This is similar to the first one, but I don't have the combination with the trigger word. I will have to change it, but basically we also load the images out of the folder, chase them through QWEN2, through the image description, notes, and so on. I will link you all and save the whole thing again in a Comfy UI output folder. So in the end you have a structure between image and description, image, description, image, description, which you can simply drag and drop. Also interesting and relatively important for data sets are, and I think we can see that very well in the data set of me. As you can see here, I have high-angle images, but I also have crop versions. So this is always quite good. The basic models are always trained on squares, while the images that we shoot and make are mostly portrait or landscape mode. It's always quite good to throw in crop variants. This is also quite easy to do. Of course, either you open your image editing program of your choice. I have Affinity Photo. You can also use Photoshop or Gimbal Creator or something like that to create crop versions. If there are many images, and many is also a good keyword, I have to say something right away, then you can also use something like this. I can also use this option here, where I can load all images from a folder and scale them to the shortest page with 1024. 1024 because this is the largest version we can train. Fluxgym scales down when we enter something else. So of course we take the largest version here. Fluxgym takes care of the rest. I crop it to 1024 by 1024 in the center. Then I put it on the file, cropped at the back. And I put it back in an output folder. And then I go through the output folder and look which of these crop variants I can still use. This has always worked pretty well, because you got a good mix. So you can fill in your data set with this. What also works very well is that Fluxgym allows a maximum limit of 150 images and 150 descriptions. The Amiga dataset has 3,500 images. Here I can pick out whatever I want freely. If you only want to train with 5 or 10 images and you want to improve it a little bit, you can go there and create a little more information with the crop variant on the one hand. But you can also build something as simple as this. You can see here that you can create an image flip on the x-axis, which shows you the image horizontally. There are also some other descriptions generated. Flux gets the information in a different way. If you only have your chocolate page on the photos, Flux might think that this is the left side. So you can use your data sets a little bit more, give a little bit more value and add a little bit more variations. What I haven't done yet, but is also possible, is to use some of your images in pencil sketch variants or oil paintings. I mean, it always depends on which software you want to use. Throw in some variants made with stylistic filters to generate ideas about how your portrait could light with styles applied. But maybe you can also achieve this by combining LoRAs, one with your portrait, one with the style you want to apply. Could also work, it's up to you to play around with it. I had issues with QWEN in my old Comfy UI version. This is a new one that I had to install, a new environment. I had problems getting the QWEN node running in my old version. I sat down at the beginning and wrote a little program. I will also give you the link. This is the QWEN image description. I will show you the program very quickly. It takes a little while for it to start. This is what it looks like. I have to move the console away from my OBS. This is basically already designed for training. So up here you can say browse and then select the folder. I'll take Amiga 500 gameplay again. Here you can enter the trigger word. That would be that. And down here you can enter a prompt. You can use the prompt function to analyze images. If I would press Analyze Images, it wouldn't start up the whole thing. In the first try it can take 10 minutes until you see the first description. After that, it goes to the 40 to 90 second range depending on the hardware. Here you get a preview of your text description. Here on the right you can see the image that has been generated. But if you have the problem of not being able to start with QWEN in the Comfy UI, this might be an alternative. The whole thing also uses the large 7B variant in the code, not the smaller 2B variant. If you want to use them, you can type in 2B here. A little more for the techies now, I know. But usually it should work in the Comfy UI as well. Yes. I press close and close the console. And that's basically it. You can then load the generated text files with your images here, depending on what you want. So either you use Florence 2, like here, with the probably detailed caption variant. You go to the Comfy UI and take the more detailed caption variant. You use a QWEN workflow to generate the things for you. Or my own program. No support for my QWEN describer. I'm afraid I cannot really offer it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I played around with it a lot in the last few weeks and it was a lot of fun to find out how it all works. If you have any questions, feel free to come to our Discord. We probably can also discuss further there. There are a lot of people who are very good at training. It is mainly in English, but also with a German language section and an Italian language section. This is due to the fact that Matteo is also on the Discord and Rob Adams too. And yes, you can then continue to philosophize a bit about how to make the whole thing even better. I hope I was able to give you a good insight into how to start with this software. Have fun experimenting and playing around. And we will see each other in the next video. I don't know how long it will take and in which direction it will go. That's a different topic. Take care. Until then, bye.